Hello, everyone. I'm Nancy Leffler.
And I'm Dan Leffler, and we are coming to you today from Being with Grief to have a conversation.
Yes, and tonight is our free intro call to introduce you to our topic for our September webinar. And that topic is how to start difficult conversations.
And what to say to those who are grieving.
Maybe sometimes what not to say.
That's true. Conversations we'd like to talk about are the conversations about death and loss, such as health changes, family changes, and those life transitions, retirement or
Moving to a new place.
starting a new job, all of the things that come into our lives and we may not be able or ready to talk about.
Right, and even COVID. Last month, our topic was more specifically on changes during COVID and how to cope with those losses. And so loss can come in many different forms, and we don't always know how to have those really important, deep conversations. We like to skate along the surface.
And why is grief so difficult to talk about? And that's
yeah, it makes us uncomfortable. That's my
and we're not
first
trained.
answer.
We're not trained to talk about or discuss the things that happen.
Right. We're not taught the skills. We don't like to think that talking about grief requires a skill, and yet it does.
Exactly. And it's the preparation for what to say and how to say it, and the things that get you ready for having a difficult conversation
Right.
that we'd like to spend a little time on tonight.
Yeah. And why is having difficult conversations, are those conversations important? Well, when someone dies, you realize that you may not have said everything that you wanted to say to that person, or some things were left either unsaid, or you felt like you were at a place where, how many times have you heard a story that someone had an argument with the person that died and they carry that around with them forever? So difficult conversations can enrich your family relationships, and they can also help to diffuse stressful situations.
Yeah, the grief recovery method talks a lot about those uncommunicated feelings that we hold inside. And if we hold those things inside too long, it can result in our bodies acting like a pressure cooker, and we're not meant to hold that tension inside.
Right. And stress, that kind of stress, constant stress, can have an adverse effect on our health, because we're meant to be in a relaxation response. All healing takes place in a relaxation response. And when we're grieving, that we have some things to heal.
Definitely. And when you are in grief, you may be confused. You may have that cloudy
spacey. I was spacey.
Yeah.
I was spacey for the first time. I never considered myself a spacey person. And yet in the first few months after Leah died, I could completely space out in a moment. And it was a little frightening, because I didn't know what to do about it.
And particularly if you're experiencing that kind of confused thinking, it can be a serious impact to whatever you're doing. If you're driving, if you're at work, and that's a whole different topic.
Right.
But what can you do to prepare for the complex and difficult conversations that we need to have?
Yeah, I like what you were talking about earlier about role playing. Why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, one way to work on having conversations is to rehearse
having
them.
the skills and doing it before the loss happens, so that you have a resource to draw on.
Well, and that's the whole purpose of these conversations, is to be proactive. And if you can select a partner that you can work with to talk about the things that you would like to say.
Mhm. And that's one of the things we can help you with too. If oftentimes I will role play with my client if they need to have a difficult conversation with a family member.
Exactly. And remembering that conversations are more than the words that you use. It has to do with the tone of voice, the relaxation of your body. And if you're, all tense and nervous, that comes across to the person that you're speaking to.
Right.
And that can really have make it even harder.
And that's why practicing is important, because the more that you practice something, the more that you will be familiar with how you might respond, and you can also practice techniques to relax.
And knowing what you would like to say is important.
Yeah.
The people that we have encountered who work with people in the last stages of their lives talk about how family is ill-prepared to have these kinds of conversations, and yet
Right.
they are probably the most important conversation that you can have.
Right.
Knowing what your loved one wants, or in the event that your loved one is no longer here, having those conversations with family members.
Right. In our case, Leah's accident happened so suddenly, and she never regained consciousness, and then she was in a medically induced coma. So we never we said goodbye to her in our own way. And I do believe that she heard us. Yet it wasn't like having someone in the room and having them be able to respond to you. So the other thing is, we didn't, at age 17, why would we have had a conversation about her funeral? And yet we were faced with making a decision like that at the worst possible time. And I don't know if we would have made the same decisions if we had had a chance to talk about it. So even though it's difficult to talk about things like that, we really encourage you to have those conversations and write down what you want. Because after you write it down, you can just tell someone where it is, or where it is in the case of another family member, and you don't have to revisit it. You've done that.
And one of the things that surprised us was the fact that we never talked about it, but Leah was an organ donor.
Right.
And what a gift that was to the families who received her in their lives. And
yet at the time, that was a horrible conversation that the doctors had with us. She had it when she got her driver's license. She had the organ donor's heart on her license, so they would have talked to us anyway. But having that designation on her driver's license really helped us to know that those were her wishes. That was one way that she communicated with us without actually having the conversation.
But you can imagine the shock that we experienced when that reality hit us.
Yeah. So
what do you do when someone has lost someone and you want to know how to approach them? What do you think is? Well,
show up for them. Don't give them too many choices, because they don't know. They may not know what they want. You can ask them, and if they say, I don't know, you can say, I understand that you don't know what you want. There are no words. One thing you can do is say, I can sit with you and you can talk if you would like, or if you would like me to sit with you, that's fine. Or the example you gave was saying, I know that your father recently died in an auto accident, and I feel sad by this, and I know you must be devastated. I was hoping that I could help you with some of the feelings you might be having.
Right. And that is what we talked about, starting with the fact, moving into a feeling about what is going on, and then letting them know what you'd like to do. In this case, I'd like to have a conversation with you
Right,
about
right.
how you're feeling and what I might be able to do for you.
Right. Or you could say, I'm going to bring dinner over tomorrow night. Would that be all right? And then when you bring the dinner over, food's always a great way to break the ice. But as Dan mentioned before, take some deep breaths and relax, because you are going to be uncomfortable. They're going to be uncomfortable too. But one of the things that you don't have to worry about is mentioning their loved one and being afraid that you're going to make them feel bad, because they already do. They haven't forgotten about it. And in our case, we like it when people mention Leah's name and tell us a memory that they, or a story that they have about her, because that means that she's still alive in her friends' hearts and in our family's hearts, and she's definitely still alive in ours. So that's if you're wondering, we'll give a couple examples of what to say or maybe what not to say to someone who's grieving.
And another important thing, I think, is that to listen.
Yeah.
To once that initial ice has broken, be a good listener.
Yeah.
Because that's really what a grieving person is.
Yeah. And
wanting to be heard.
You may get a cue to what to say from listening. Sometimes we go in with a preconceived script of what we think is going to be the best thing to say, and then the person is telling us something completely different. So have that in case you need it, and listen to what they're saying and respond to what they need. They might say, I really don't want to talk about this, but I do want you to sit with me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. A lot of times, just being present to someone is the gift that you can give, and words aren't necessary,
right.
But just being present.
Right.
So
right.
If you'd like to hear more about this topic,
we have a lot more to say about this, more things to say or not to say to those who are grieving, and how to start other kinds of difficult conversations. Difficult conversations come up in our lives every day, and a lot of times we tend to push them away or say, I'm too busy now. How about if we do this later? And later may not come.
Right. We avoid having those uncomfortable moments, and we look for excuses on what to not say.
Exactly. We'll give you one example now before we tell you how you can join us. Most of the time, anything that starts with at least, think about what comes after at least. For instance, we had people tell us, well, at least you have another child. That doesn't help. That's not helpful. Or at least they're no longer in pain. While there's a kernel of truth in there, right after your loved one dies, those things just are not helpful. And they're coming from a place of good intention, yet with some thought, there are other things that are more helpful, and we'll share more about those in our September webinar, which is on September 13th.
Mm-hmm.
It's Tuesday. All of the webinars are on the second Tuesday of the month at 11 a.m. Central Time. So we will we'll put details about how to join in the comments. However, the basics are the first 3 months are $45, and then it's $20 a month to continue. All of these recordings, and this is like the 7th
7:30.
Six, yeah. In a membership portal, when you join, you will have access to all the previous recordings, and every recording that comes after this for the duration of your membership. You also will be invited into our Facebook community, and that's a private Facebook group where no one can find it unless they are invited by us. And that's where we have deeper conversations. That's where you can ask your questions. That's where we can connect in between our webinars.
And during our webinar, we also invite questions, so that if there's something specific on your mind, you know that on that second Tuesday of the month, we'll open the meeting and allow you to share if you're inclined to
Right,
share, or
right.
send us a private message, and
Exactly.
and then we can talk generally about the topic.
Yeah. And if there are any grief topics that we haven't covered that you would like to hear us talk about, let us know. We will be planning our topics for next year. We have topics planned through the end of this year. Just a little preview of that. Our next topic will be navigating grief during the holidays, and we wanted to have it a little bit before the holidays, because once you get into that time period, you're going to need some of these tips before that. Let's just say that. And then in November, we're going to be talking about, we're going to be interviewing a friend of ours from Raleigh, Heather Hill, who is a funeral director, and she has vast knowledge on many things, and is very down to earth and easy to talk to. So you want to make sure you join us for that. And then our last session of this year in December will be about presence, and we'll probably do presence experience, and talk about why presence and being present is important, not only when you're grieving, but in your everyday life.
Exactly. So until then, we again invite you to be part of this community. We look forward to having these conversations, and really feel that this is a great way of being proactive when grief and loss enters your life.
And you can find the link to join us in the comments.
Thank you.